Hey guys, 8 Brian here. Now, as you all know, I'm a huge retro gaming enthusiast. But what do you do when one of your favorite consoles, like let's say the classic NES top loader, just isn't working like it used to anymore? It seems like every time you go to grab a game and pop it in to play it, all you get is a bunch of pixelated nonsense and frozen screens. It seems like every time that you go to power it on, you're cleaning out the system more often than you're playing it. Well, it sounds like you probably need to replace the 72-pin connector. So thankfully, that's what I'm here to do today. On this episode of Retro Repairs, I'm going to walk you through how to repair your classic NES 72-pin connector. Stay tuned. I'm sure this has happened to everyone. I'm ready to play some Mega Man 2. I've got my CRT TV all hooked up. Got my classic Nintendo console all hooked up and ready to go. I got some off time today, so I figure I'll pop in one of my favorite games, Mega Man 2, and enjoy some classic gaming goodness. Go to turn on my set, and what the heck? What is this? Just a bunch of pixelated nonsense. Alright, let's try resetting it. And damn it, that still didn't work. Alright, well I know one thing that'll be sure to get this game working. Let me just blow in it here, and that ought to get this game up and running again. Alright. And no, you gotta be kidding me. It's still not working. I've had it with this. Looks like I'm not playing any Mega Man today, and I've had it with this stupid malfunctioning Nintendo. Alright, so now we've got our Nintendo all disconnected from the television. So here's some of the basic tools that you're going to need to do this repair. Overall, even if you're a beginner and you've never done this before, I would say set aside a maximum of about 2 hours to complete this repair. If you've never done it before, and especially if you're not swapping out the 72-pin connector and you're actually trying to reset the pins, that definitely takes some time. But have a little patience, and this repair will definitely save you some money, and it's just good to know for maintenance in the future of your console. So some of the basic tools that you're going to need, a standard Phillips head screwdriver. Now you can use one with a magnetized tip because that'll make it easier for you instead of having to fish around for the screws. You know, that way they won't get lost. So that will definitely help, but I just use a standard Phillips head screwdriver. And now some people will also use a little hook or prong tool, but I just use a micro, like a little mini flathead screwdriver, and this is good enough to get underneath of the pins and lift them up as much as you as you need to. So you don't really need anything specialized. You know, something like this you can get this at a Dollar Tree and like a little pack of little mini screwdrivers. That'll work great for our purposes here. I also just have a regular magnet, so that way with the screws, I can just put them on top of there. They don't get lost. I'm not losing anything. That's very handy, very helpful. And then, of course, optionally, you may need a new 72-pin connector if the one that you're trying to repair is just too far gone and too far damaged. So, that's one of those things that you may not find out until you've actually taken it apart and tried to repair it. By modifying the pins first and then realizing, okay, this still isn't working, and you may have to buy either an original refurbished 72-pin connector, which I know some people recommend, over the brand new ones that you can get from China and stuff like that. But I've generally found that those ones, even the ones from China, they still seem to work fine. I don't think there's that much of a difference between the original OEM Nintendo part versus just the reproduction. A lot of people say it's because of the steel versus like the original Nintendos have kind of like a copper tungsten alloy, which gives better connectivity. But I've used some of the reproductions before, and I've never really noticed that big of a difference, so I don't think it's a huge deal breaker. All right, so number one, now we're just going to flip over the NES here, and you got 6 total screws that you're going to have to remove here. So you got 3 up top, the other 2 on the top are kind of recessed on the sides there, and then 3 on the bottom. You may have a dust cover on the bottom. Mine does not. At least I don't know where I put it at the moment, because I just had this Nintendo forever. But, I mean, that doesn't really do anything. Just covers up the unused expansion port, so don't worry about that. So, you just have your 6 screws that you're going to take out. We'll start doing that now. And then we'll just pop out the old screws here. I said, that's why the magnet really comes in handy, so that way you're not wondering where the heck you put all your little screws and other things you're going to need throughout the course of this repair. Keeps them all nice and organized. Okay, so we're going to take the top cover off. We're just going to set that off to the side for a minute here. And then as we take a look at the actual unit itself, we'll set this little pin connector off to the side as well, so we're not going to need that right at the moment. We see we have a lot of stuff going on underneath. We have the RF shielding, which is what this metal plate is around the side, and we have 2, 4, let's see, 6, looks like there's a total of 7 screws that you need to unscrew, so we're going to have to take those all off first. Now that's done, we'll just lift that off. And put that with the other top part of the case. And now you still have one more screw that's not connected to the RF shielding that you're going to have to remove. So that's going to have to allow you to get access to the board in order to remove this whole unit here. So that's just on the back where your video out and your power is. And now this is where you have to be careful. You really want to make sure that you don't mix up your screws here. That's why a magnet will really help to keep them separate. You'll have 2 regular size screws on the back that don't really attach to anything except for the top loading tray itself. And now this is where this is important. You want to make sure the screws in the back, they're going to be the longest. So you want to keep them separate from everything else, or else when you go to put it back together, it's not going to function correctly. Because they need to be a certain depth in order for this to work. And then the ones in the front here, they're very tricky, because they have to be screwed down to a certain depth. So if you screw them all the way down, it'll over-tighten this tray the way it moves up and down like that. And then when you go to reassemble your unit, it will just be loose and it won't lock in place and your games won't work. So you don't want to tighten them down all the way. I usually leave it about maybe 1 to 2 turns or a quarter turn loose, so that way it will still lock into place when you go to load your games. Alright, and now how we remove this, because this has to slide off. That's why you remove this screw here in the back. So this just comes up a little tiny bit like that. This just pulls forward. Now there's nothing really you have to do with this unless your catch here is broken and it doesn't work. And you can take a little paper clip and you just pop this out and you can thread that through, and then that way that will catch and you can repair that. So if your catch is malfunctioning on this, you can do that repair while you're at it. And all you really need is like a little pair of scissors and a paper clip, and just pop this out where you see the hole at, and then just put the little short end will stick out, and you can just glue that in there, tape that in there, and that'll work just fine. And now with this, so that's why you have to be able to lift that up. So you can unscrew the rest of it, but it's just much easier. There's no reason to unscrew everything else. You can just lift the board up a little bit and just pull that out. So there's our 72 pin connector. And now this one is actually a new one that I replaced. So I'll show you what the bad one looked like before. And this one was really just beyond, just really beyond any state of repair. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take our little flathead screwdriver here, and you don't want to do it on this bottom part because usually these prongs, they stay fine, so you don't need to adjust them. But what we are going to do is with these all up in here, you're you're going to want to take this little flat part of the screwdriver here, and we're just going to put it right underneath at the base of the clip a little bit. And you're just going to turn ever so slightly, and that will give you better tension now on the spring, and that will reconnect. So you're just going to go down this entire line, and just one by one, you're going to just keep turning each one of these little pins until they just raise up enough. You don't have to do it much, just like a quarter turn, and so that way they're nice and even looking like that. You just want them all nice and even. You don't want to go crazy. You don't want to turn them so much that you can't get your game in here, which, believe me, that's a mistake that I had made on my first time doing it. But this is one of those things where less is definitely more, and you just want to do it enough just so they're even, and you have some nice tension. And just do that through your whole entire top piece from one end to the next. And once you're done, this is what the finished product should look like. All your pins should be basically the same height. If you were a little bit too high, you can try to, just get them back into place a little bit. But, you don't want to fool with it too much, just as long as, you can feel there's good tension back on these again. You can see that they're springy, they're moving up and down. So this is ready to go. One other thing that you want to do, since you have your console already open here, is it's generally a good idea to take some rubbing alcohol. Now I use 70%, but 90% is generally a much better rubbing alcohol percentage that you want to use. And go ahead and just swab both front and back of your connectors here, just to make sure that's nice and clean. Go ahead and clean up anything on the inside, just because you have the opportunity and you have it open. So why not? And it's just doing some really good preventative maintenance. All right, so now that we've got all of our pins on our 72-pin connector, they've all been propped up. They're all ready to go. Everything's looking good. We're going to go ahead and we're going to reassemble the unit. Now again, this is why you wanted to have that little screw removed in the first place, because this can be kind of tricky to put back together. So you're going to put the pin connector, which this longer lip is going to go over the back side like that and snap into place. And then you just want to hold on to this as an entire unit and just going to line it up, and we're just going to slide it over those back pins. There we go. So we got that all in place there now. And now you're going to want to make sure that everything is nice and lined up. So you're going to feel some of these little, there's going to be little divots to where the little pins and stuff are going to set into place. So you're making sure that your tray is seated exactly where it's supposed to be. And now that's where you want to remember your screws and the exact order that you had them in. So I recommend putting in your longer screws first. And also, don't tighten them all the way down yet, just in case something's not fully aligned correctly. That way you can go back and you can tweak things as you're going along. So you don't have to commit to anything and then have to do everything all over again. Because the last thing you want to do is, forgot to put one screw in the right order, and then you got to go through it and do the whole thing over again. And that's just no fun. So, take your time. It's definitely worth it. And these are the two that go on the back here. And like I said, these don't really hold on to anything except for the unit itself. Just applying more tension. And now these ones in the front, these are the real trick. These can be very tricky, because you don't want to tighten them down all the way. And one way you can tell if you have this assembled correctly or incorrectly, I'll show you really quick here. Just as for example, Now, if you have them tightened too far down, which you would think, oh, well, you know, you want to get it as tight as possible. That's the best thing to do, right? Well, no, because now it's not locking into place. It's not lining up. So what you want to do is you just want to back off maybe one turn, about a half turn on each side. And keep doing it. Keep backing off that screw. You notice it start to catch reliably. And usually, I'll do about 10 in a row. And that's telling me every time I did it now, 10 out of 10 times, that's closing, that's opening. So now that's set to the right height and the right position. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to replace the RF shielding. Now that we've got everything screwed in, let's go ahead and we'll put the top cover back on. And then we'll get the rest of the housing back together. One thing I also recommend with this is you don't want to screw the housing screws too tightly because they do affect the tension on your cartridge tray. So that's why a little bit looser is better when you're installing the screws on the cartridge tray. So when you go and put all the screws in on your system, you're not wondering, well, what the heck happened just a second ago? It was closing and locking into place. And if that happens, I recommend to take a, just take and back off of these screws a little bit on the outside of the case, and that will usually resolve this problem. But usually it's a good idea to just test and see. I've already got a little bit of a malfunction there, so I'm going to have to back off on some of these screws, probably the middle one there a little bit. And it's just, these old consoles can be very finicky sometimes. They're all using springs and gears and different mechanisms, and that can definitely make it tricky. And there we go. So this is ready to go. Let's get it hooked back up to the TV and see if it works.
Alright, so after all that hard work, maybe this Nintendo will finally be working right and I can play some Mega Man 2 today after all. So here's hoping. Got everything hooked up, let's pop the game in. And I'll grab my controller here, and fingers crossed. And look at that, we got the copyright and title screen right on the first time. Alright, so it looks like this is going to be working fine after all as I'm waiting for my game to load up. There we go, we're at the main screen. And let's play some Mega Man 2. It's about time. Awesome.
Well, alright guys, that's going to do it for this episode of Retro Repairs. I hope this tutorial was helpful in you getting your 72-pin connector either repaired or replaced, so that way you can play some of your favorite classic Nintendo games again. It really isn't as hard as it looks. As you can see, I was able to get my copy of Mega Man 2 up and running first time. So, until next time, comment down below what you want to see me to repair next, and you might just see it in a future video. Till next time, my friends.
Hey guys, if you liked the video that you just watched, don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below, and you can follow me at Facebook at King of Retro or Twitter at #8ByteBrian. See you next time.